Hello, friends. How are you today? We have been covering a lot of conceptual topics so far in Dota. I know when we did the draft phase, that is technically once the game has begun, we pressed accept, but a lot of that is still also quite conceptual. And then we switched to itemization, which was also. But today, we're finally going to get into the game. We're going to start playing technically. It's only up to the first minute and 30 seconds, up to the 0 minute mark. But I do think there are a lot of things here to already start to be aware of as we play. For those of you wondering, we are going to go back to itemization. I did see people not only leave nice comments, thank you, but request some more in-depth analysis on items, and we shall do that. But I'm not quite ready yet. I have to think about how to present it, but I definitely will go back to it either soon or after this video series. We'll figure it out, but I did see people want it, so we'll get to it. But for now, let's talk about what to do when the game loads in and before we collect bounty runes. Let's cover a couple objectives. We want to leave our fountain as soon as possible. That's why it is important to buy all the items we want. In that draft phase, give our tangos over to the mid laner in that stage as well, so that as soon as we can start pressing buttons, we want to start running into the lane. And these are our objectives. We are going to place wards if we have any. And even if we don't have any wards, we still want to be there to see if the enemy has wards. We are going to be trying to click on everyone. I guess this covers into scouting the lanes. So scouting the lanes, part of that is to see which heroes are going to which lane. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not. To a lesser extent for most players, because lane swapping isn't that common in pub games. But I think the higher level you go, you may end up with some people who are willing to do that, and they might see like a Ursa versus Razor lane. Like, that would be really bad. So now we're going to want to swap, say, with our offlane Enchantress. No, wait, that's a bad example. Razor's good against her. Another ranged offlaner. I'm panicking. Pugna or Enigma. They're okay against Razor, I think. So you might want to swap that. Now, of course, it would depend on the matchups, and that's the whole point. That's why we want to scout out the lanes, try to see where everyone is in the game, so that if we want to switch, we have time for it. And that's why we have to leave early to see people. And along with scouting the lanes, it's not just seeing the heroes. We want to click on them and check their items, because that's going to affect how we play the game. So, for example, if we click on them and see a ward, we might know we need to buy a sentry if we didn't have one. Or we're just going to watch them and see if they place it really obviously. And more likely, they're just going to hold it. And if that's the case, we need to keep checking them throughout the laning stage to see when they place their ward, if they ever do, so that we can kind of know where it is and go deward that. But in other things we're going to check, we're going to see how much regen did they buy. Do they have a lot? Then maybe we can't trade. Like, we're still going to need to trade, but we're going to be a little careful because we know they have a lot of regen. Maybe they bought very little, in which case we know, okay, we're going ham. We are focusing this guy. The other guy has a good amount of regen, but this guy does not have a lot. We want to punish him. These are the things we're looking for, trying to see, oh, he's got an Orb of Venom. They're looking to be aggressive. Let's back up a little, like all that stuff. Now, we're also going to begin trading a little bit if it's safe to do so. So every hero has a passive HP and mana regen to some extent, and maybe some of the items you bought also play into that. When you're sitting at full health, that essentially does nothing. So for example, if you have 2 mana regen per second, that's a little high for... Well, let's just go with it. 2 mana regen per second. If you're sitting at full health, you're not gaining anything. And if you sit there for, say, 10 seconds, that would have been 20 mana you would have regenerated. So essentially, you've lost 20 mana. I know technically you haven't lost it, but you didn't get it, which is something you could have been getting. So if you use a spell right away as soon as the lane, like even before the laning starts, you can start regenerating mana. So you use 100 mana, and then by the time you get to lane, maybe it's been 10, 20 seconds, you've already got back like 20 to 40 mana, which, the creeps finally meet, a little bit more time goes, and then it's time to cast another spell so that we're not just sitting at full health. You very rarely want to just sit at full health and mana. You want to have used some so that, you can keep regenerating, and it's just generally more efficient. One, I will point out, there are sometimes exceptions. So, say Crystal Maiden, whose mana pool relative to her spells is so bad, it's so bad that she does not want to just throw out a casual spell. She does want to save it for like when it's needed. So cases like that, do be aware. But for most people, you can usually cast a couple spells before like it's an issue. So casting one before the lane starts is okay. But if you have like serious issues like Crystal Maiden, then maybe you wouldn't do this. But you could trade some right clicks because you also have passive HP regen. And then we're going to get bounty runes, or maybe we're not. We need to decide how strong are the offlaners. Can we win a fight here if it's like a 2v2 safe lane and off lane? How's that go? Maybe we can't see one of the offlaners, so maybe the off lane's missing, maybe the 4 support is missing. Like, can we do that, or are they setting up a trap? Like, what's happening? These are the kind of decisions we want to think about before the game has begun. And then finally, an optional objective that changes all the other objectives is if we're going to attempt a gank. So sometimes the 5 position can go to the off lane with the 4 position and the off laner, and you might try to set up a kill before the game really begins. And you have to recognize that if you're going to do that, like that changes all the other objectives a bit, because you're not going to make it in time to place or check wards. You aren't really going to be able to scout out the safe lane. Your carry might be able to do it, but they have to be a little safe because they're going to be on their own. They probably can't trade because there's no way they can trade effectively 2v1, and the bounty runes might be lost because for your safe lane, the closest bounty rune is in the river, which is kind of scary for a carry to go on their own. Now the reverse of that is if the 4 support comes to your safe lane. So now you have the 4 support, the 5 support, and the carry going for a gank or to fight for runes. In which case, this can be a little easier because the off laner who is by themselves can safely get the rune that is in your off lane jungle, or at least it's a little more safe than trying to go into the river like for the carry in the opposite case. So depending which way it goes may affect your objectives, but that is something you just decide before the game begins, and then decide, do I have time to run back to lane, or do I have to teleport? Either way will usually be okay, but it's just something to begin thinking about. Yeah, let's go into the game and take a look at stuff. Here we are in a custom lobby. I've already set this up a bit, where I've created some heroes on both teams, and I'm going to show you why it is so important to leave the fountain as quickly as we can. So here I have Keeper of the Light, 330, Snapfire, 300, and Crystal Maiden, 275. This is the full range of possible movement speeds, base movement speeds in the game, where 330 is the fastest, 275 is the slowest, and 300 is around average. Now, of course, you could start with Boots or Windlace, which would change this a bit, but let's just go with this to demonstrate it. Same with these guys, so it's the same hero, so we can see the same movement speeds. Now, as the hard support, we're going to run to probably around here. Let's say if we're on the Radiant, let's cover Radiant first. So we'd probably run to around here, and if we were going to ward, we might consider, let's say, putting a ward here. Maybe, it depends who you're playing against. So like against a Pudge, if you watch that analysis, I would recommend the ward go here. Other times, I would love to place the ward here, but you'll notice what I'm about to show is that when we have both these heroes move, this is about the middle. So, like, both Keeper of the Lights will reach this spot around the same time, which means if both sides left the fountain immediately, and this is where they're going to meet, how am I going to place a ward here without being spotted? I can't, really. If I was Keeper of the Light against some other 330 movement speed hero like Pugna, for example, if we both ran over here, if I try to place the ward here, he's going to see me if we left at the same time. This is why it matters so much. Just waiting like 5 seconds in the fountain would give me enough time to plant this ward and then back off without being seen by Pugna. This is also why considering the movement speed of different heroes can also matter a lot. Giving the ward to a faster hero rather than a slower hero to place the ward without being seen can be very important. Now think about the offlane perspective. Where would they like to place the ward? They would like to place it maybe back here to see you trying to pull, maybe spot the courier. They could plant it up here, again, to look for the pulls. they might place it more over here so that they can see you trying to play around the trees. Possibly see any couriers because sometimes they end up running through here when the lane's pushed up a little bit. And they would see you going to pull, even if they can't see the exact pull, they would see you like leave the area and they would kind of get an idea. So these are the general areas they're going to ward. And again, keeping in mind that when the heroes are the same movement speed, so like both have 300, then this would be around the middle, which means as long as we leave soon, we'll get to about here. And okay, like let's say we would be here and then they would be here. And this is about where you would see each other because of the amount of vision you have in the daytime. And then you'd be able to check them to see if they had a ward. And because they would be here, they could place a ward here without being seen. That could be possible. Some people also put it up here, like they run over here, drop it, and then run back. Those would be difficult to see. But if they want to place it down here, like you would spot that. And if they wanted to go here, they might be able to get away with that because they could run down here, drop it, and you walking this way may not see them. But that's why it kind of matters to then keep running forward, and you might spot them backing away. And the only reason they would ever be walking backwards from here, really, is if they had placed a ward. Now, they might be acting tricky and just like walk down there pretending to ward. That's certainly possible. We don't have to go for the D-ward immediately, but we would note that, and we would say, huh, I wonder why he was down here where people like to ward occasionally. I wonder if that had anything of significance for me to take note of. It does. I might want to buy a sentry. And if I suspect they see me moving, like for example, I go to pull and they immediately start running at me, that might be enough evidence at that point to say, you know what? I saw him down here walking away. He's now chasing me like way too fast. I think, I might then put the sentry, say around here. Like if I saw him running backwards here, then it's probably in this area. And putting a sentry maybe a bit closer this way would cover most of the likely spots. And you can also consider their movement speed. Like, would he have had time to really run all the way over here, drop this, and then back out without me seeing him at all? Because I would have spotted him like as soon as I'm in like this area about. So keeping in mind how fast they might have moved would be something you want to think of. So let's go ahead and have them run here. Oh no, shoot. Okay, go back. Hang on. All right. I unselected it while I was talking there. So we have them all selected. Let's wait till 110 now, I suppose, just to make it easier to take note of the timing. Okay. So thinking about, again, where they're going toward, it would be here. It would be, maybe around here. Some people like to walk around here, try to place the wards over here. And this is why just a few seconds could make all the difference. Now, if we take a look, the reason I'm using 3 different movement speed heroes is just so you can kind of see the difference of, like, even if you left the base as fast as you possibly could, but you're a Crystal Maiden, and they are, like, Pugna, someone fast, or maybe someone who bought boots, it's pretty much impossible to beat them to here if you leave at the same time, just because they are a faster hero. But this is why any amount of delay is bad. So if you're a slow hero, it's so important to get out here really quickly, because if they just wasted like 5 seconds doing who knows what, going to the bathroom or something, then you will be able to make it here in time to spot them trying to place a ward. So now let's pay attention to this here. So I said this is about where the middle, it looks like it's a little further out, I guess, this time. And yeah, this is the difference between a 330 movement speed hero and a 275 movement speed hero. All the way like this far. Which means this guy, he could now place his ward right here and then back away before Crystal Maiden could ever see him. Now, a moderately faster hero like Snapfire, this tree is currently blocking her vision. If he tries to plant down here, she's going to see him. He could probably drop a ward right here and then start backing away. And then as Snapfire turns this corner, she might see him. She might see him backing away. And the important thing to do is click on them, check their inventory. Funny enough, he's a bot and did buy some wards. We're going to talk about looking at people's inventory in a second. But you would click him and look for any suspicious activity that might suggest he had a ward. And that's kind of it in terms of this scouting the lanes part. Coming out here to place the ward. That's kind of all I have to say about wards. We still have other objectives to cover. But just to finish showing up all the times. So they were around here. We were paused at around 38 seconds. Look how long it took these guys to walk in. It was like an extra 10 seconds. Which, again, if you delay in lane for like 10 seconds trying to decide, oh, what items do I buy? Or like, oops, I forgot to give tangos. Let me go back and do that. You may have missed your chance to check for the ward. So as soon as, that Dota logo fades out from black, I am already clicking over in this direction if I'm Radiant, or if in the Dire, I'm clicking on this side of my screen to get them to start moving as soon as I can. Something else you can do is then put your courier here. That's kind of a minor thing. You don't have to do that. But it'll save you like a second, right? If you look at the courier. Save you like 2 or 3 seconds. By putting your courier out here, when you buy items, it'll still go on immediately. And instead of running from like all the way back here, it'll just leave. So, that's like a minor trick. It's not that important. Now, if you have to ward mid, I don't really like that. I think the mid laners should just do it themselves. I think that part of the meta has not shifted yet, where many mid laners are still in this idea of like, I always should just stand here and block. But I think it has shifted a bit to many mid laners now come to fight for runes. I think it depends per mid laner. Like some need very good creep equilibrium, so they have to go block, and others don't. I don't know enough about mid lane to go more into that, but I do think mid laners have the time to at least come out and plant their own wards. Something worth noting, if you are going to be the one planting the ward, it's often good to, let's use our hero actually. I am trapped in here. Have him come over here. All right, run over here. So if you were the support and you wanted to ward for Radiant, you would run over here, and here we go. And you would drop it, say, somewhere around here. See, this is why I feel like mid laners should do it themselves, because sometimes you're not sure what they want to see, and like whether they would have preferred it up here or something. But you can ask them if you're doing it and say like, where do you want it, and then go place it for them. Similar reasons for the mid lane why you need to leave immediately is because if we place our ward first and then we back away, we might now see someone come up here and place their ward. Now, what you're supposed to do is stand behind this tree and drop it, or stand behind this tree and drop it here. And that lets you try to avoid getting seen. Many people, especially at lower levels, don't really think about it. They just like run down mid and then drop it and then run back. And oftentimes, if you're fast, you can be like standing here being ready to click, and the second you see them, you check and see if they have a observer ward, and they might drop it. In that case, it's a very easy deward. I recommend you buy the sentry. If you buy the sentry and drop it for the mid laner and give it to them, you'll get the gold for that deward. Mid laners should just buy their own sentry because they'll get the ward gold. But whatever. So that's pretty much it about why it matters to run out and place your ward pretty quickly. Now, once you have placed your ward, and we'll cover some inventory tricks. Ooh, actually, I don't know if I care enough to put it in here. There are some tricks you can do. I'm not going to cover it, actually, for now. But there are some tricks you can do to see where the enemy warded. But I don't think it's worth it for a 5 support to do in most games. Where if someone wards mid, it's almost always over here, or almost always over here. Now, if it's over here, let's say the Radiant puts their ward here, and the Dire does not know that. And the Dire wants to check. Ah, oh, shoot. Okay, so you see how the tower can actually hit you over here? The problem is it can't see you because of these trees. So if you wanted to, as the Radiance, or as the Dire side, it doesn't have to be the position 5, anyone could do it. You can come and stand here. And if this tower hits you, then there has to be a ward over here, because there's no other reason. Before the game starts, right, before any creeps are in the game, there's no reason that standing here, they should be able to see you. Because as you can see, we cannot see this spot because the trees block it. Technically, you can do it over here too. You will be forced to essentially take a tower hit by standing here. And if they can see you here, then they probably have a ward like right around here or here, I think is how that one works. Yeah, so if they had a ward here, they would see you. or like a ward maybe in the middle right here. It used to be a thing where you would smoke to come place a ward because they can't see you. And that was how you'd be able to like ward in this middle spot right here. I don't see anyone do that nowadays, and I don't really think it's worth it. Like 80 gold in the beginning lane just to do this is kind of a lot. And in pub games, it's very rare to get a team to coordinatedly be like, let's smoke and gank them. By the way, let's cut through mid so I can drop a ward. Like, it just doesn't really happen. So I wouldn't bother using this trick. But if for whatever reason you want to attempt this trick, go for it. And it doesn't just apply in the in this stage of the game. Technically, it applies like any time. As long as this tower is up, you should be suspicious if they can see you in this spot of some kind of ward, probably around here, possibly over here. Would that be seen? No, you would not be seen. So it would have to be in this area. For the Dire side, what do I need to do? Here we go. Dire side, very similar, where you can technically stand right at this tree, and if they can see you, then they probably have a ward right here. And then same over here, where if you kind of like stand right at this edge, right around here, the tower should not be able to see you, and so then they should have a ward here. Again, I don't think it's really worth your time as a position 5 to do this. It's up to you. If you're a fast hero, I suppose it could be worth it. But attempting that trick means that the mid lane really matters, and they need to have vision for whatever reason. Whether the enemy team has a lot of gankers and you're scared for them, so you want to clear out the ward to make sure they're a little bit safer, or maybe your mid laner is really strong, in which case, if the enemy side can't get, doesn't have any vision, they should be a little scared. For example, if your team had the gankers, that could be another good reason. And like, of course, it's nice to get the D ward gold if you do spot this, but even if you do, and if you don't, you essentially give up your chance to do all this because you do not have time to come run out to lane, really, and then run over to mid, and then back in time for a rune. It's... I guess if you're a fast hero, you actually do kind of have time, but it's tough, and you're going to miss out on some of the other objectives we're about to cover, where you're not really going to be able to trade much because you're like spending your time over here. You're not going to be able to possibly contest runes, depending how fast you are. So, at this time, I don't fully recommend it to you guys, but I am going to leave it as an option because it might be worth doing if you play a fast hero. At this moment, I don't play any heroes fast enough to attempt this, but I think if I was like a Keeper of the Light, I might give it a shot. If I didn't need other items and I was willing to buy a Sentry Ward, it might be okay then to like test over here. See, it's harder for the Dire because the Dire can place this side or this side. Whereas if you're a Radiant, most people, I feel like, will place it over here if they're trying to hide in the trees. Or they'll just like run straight up through here and try to drop that in time. But it's harder to check this one like we just talked about, and it's much safer to check this one. So if you're a Dire and you're a fast hard support, but the issue is you have to run from this side of the minimap, and running all the way down and then back around like takes up so much time. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. It's something I myself have not been testing out too much, and I don't think you need to. So, with that, what is our next objective? I don't think I really need to show you like the concept of trading in lane or trading before the horn. I think that's very obvious. Actually, I will show you in some of my clips, but like I don't think I need to do an in-depth explanation, right? It would be good to use like my mana here. Oh, oops. It would be good to use my mana here because now you'll see that it will start to regen. So let's say I did this at, let's say we saw them and it was still 30 seconds before the game began. By the time the rune actually spawns, I would have regained about 33 mana. So I'd be like, I guess around here-ish, you know? And then by the time the creeps actually meet, like, you know, these creeps are still fighting. It's been another 40 seconds. That kind of covers a good majority of the cost of my spell, and I'm pretty much ready to cast it again. Whereas if I just held my spell the whole time and waited till, let's say now when we finally meet in lane, that's like a full minute later. that is like half a spell that I would have regenerated already. And similar to health, like if we trade a couple auto attacks, the same deal. I would have regenerated about, say, 80 health if I had attacked when it's like 20 seconds before the horn, and then like by the time the creeps meet. You don't even necessarily need to use a tango or any of your regen. So if you fight, depending how much you lose, like if you lost more than half, yes, you probably need to use a tango. But if you were like 3/4, I would just wait. I would just let it heal naturally on its own. And then when you finally get to lane, and if you see them coming to attack you, then I would finally use a tango, probably. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think we can now... Oh, finally, last thing, sorry. Bounty runes. You need to decide whether you can do these or not. And if you... Let's say I'm Caudle, right? This works especially well with fast heroes, but it can work with other heroes. If you spot them here and you're like, wow, we cannot fight this, just run around. Come over here, right? You can't actually see... Like, if I was... Oops, I don't have that blink right. I forgot. So if they were standing here ready to get the rune, many people don't just stand here. They play a little more conservatively. They're like over here. Notice where their vision cuts off, right here. They cannot see you actually just walk this way up the high ground. So if they're standing on the rune, you'll see that this edge is exposed a bit, but that you could just hug this outer edge and go in like this.
They're meaning to smash that bottom
You see?
tower of yours.
You see? And this would be about where they have to stand to cover this whole spot. The thing is, even if they're standing here, they may not be able to stop you. So the idea would be... I forgot it's not on unlimited. The idea is like, you see them, oh, I can't kill them. Hopefully your carry is standing around here to at least scout where they are. And then you run down here knowing that for most heroes, if you can't see them, they can't see you. Unless you have like reduced vision. And then you run up here and you secure this rune. Or you like poke your head up and you see if the mid laner is here. Because like we said, many mid laners prefer to just stand here and block. So you pop up and check and then decide like, oh, okay, no one's here. I'm going to grab this rune. And now I just run out this way. They'll do the usual, oh, we got this, nice work, we got both. They come up here and like, ah, man, he took our rune. Now, sometimes you're not going to want to risk that. Like, if you have a very high risk of chance of dying. So, like, slower heroes who are more likely to get run down. Or say the enemy team had, like, a Spirit Breaker, who all they need to do is see you very briefly, like over here, and then he could charge you and all of that. Or if you do see the mid laner, you probably have to run away immediately because these guys are going to, cut this way. He's going to cut straight down. Consider your teleport cooldown as well. If they have no way to cancel it, you might be able to just run up, try to grab the rune, and then TP back to lane. This works especially well if you have a salve, so that if they do hit you a lot while you're trying to teleport, then you just heal up. It sucks because you did use your salve, but again, 40 gold for your full team is 200 gold, and the salve is only 110, and you can just buy another salve on the way, so it's not so bad. And sometimes you do... I'm going to show you a trick. So sometimes when you go for this bounty rune click war, you'll notice... Okay, so see where I'm standing? Actually, let me put a different hero here. This is going to be hard. I'm going to, like, accidentally click this rune. I think there's a way around it anyways. So you see where Caudle is standing right now? So if you were two melee heroes hitting each other like this, I am able to easily click this rune, and so is he, really. What you want to do when you're trying to fight for the rune and have a click war is instead of standing on this side of the rune, where notice the rune is still in front of him, you want to stand on, like, this side of the rune, where, do you see how much harder it is to, like, click it? He's kind of, like, in the way. Now, obviously, that time it did just go through, and I think the bounty rune, I don't know this for sure, I think the bounty rune is meant to be, like, more easily clicked, but oftentimes standing a little further up, like, visually imagining where the bounty... Does this work? Spawn runes. It's probably one word. I feel like there is a command for it. Oh, it might only be the power runes. Well, whatever. I think you see what I mean. Like, when you stand on this side, it is easier, and then you, like, spam click this way as the rune is spawning, and it's a little easier to get it, I think, than standing on this side, where it's, like, open and easier to click. And in fact, if you want... I should have checked where the setting is first. Here. Under options, go to advanced. And then over here, auto repeat right mouse click. So when I hold the right button, it just does this. This is generally faster than trying to click it yourself. But some people are really good at clicking, so it depends. You don't have to use this setting. It's by no means like a guaranteed win, but if you want it and you're bad at clicking, you can try having that setting on. Yeah, I think that's all. Let's move on to clips of the game. Wrong, I forgot. A couple more things. Try hard stuff here. First one, not try hard. How do we decide if we're going for the rune and whether it's worth fighting over? That kind of comes down to how likely you are to die going for it. It's generally better to not die than to get a bounty rune. Sometimes it just happens. Like, you can still win a game even if the enemy team gets all 4 bounty runes. It sucks, and it's harder, but you can. But getting first blooded can be worse depending who gets it and how it goes. And especially just giving a free kill. Oftentimes, if they have the power to just kill you straight up, then they probably killed you and got the rune. So it's better to just let them have the rune in those cases. You can make that decision based on whether you have a stun, whether you're faster, like who are they, right? I would not run into a clockwork if I was, say, a Crystal Maiden, unless maybe my carry was really strong, like maybe Ursa. He might be willing to fight pretty early. But against, say, a clockwork and a Venomancer, I think that would be really bad. That sounds like both of us could die. So I'd just be like, maybe we don't have to do this. Maybe we can go try to sneak around and pick up their rune instead and then teleport out. Because you'll have this 10-second window. You do have to be a little careful. Where when the game starts, there's 1:30, which is 90 seconds. And the teleport is on cooldown for 100 seconds. So until the 10-second mark, you can't actually teleport. So if you do try to go and sneakily take their rune and then back away, you might have to go hide for a little bit until you can actually teleport out. Now finally, if there's an alchemist in your game and you trust him to an extent, so like he doesn't seem like a bad player or something, I mean generally you just shouldn't assume. If he is starting Grievel's Greed, which he really should, then sometimes it's worth dying for. It's worth trading a lot of health for, more likely. Try not to die. Like really, if you think you're going to die, it's probably not worth it because you're probably just not even going to get the rune. Sometimes it can be. And sometimes you can grab the rune and then go sprint over to their spot as well and try to steal it there. And if you die for 2 runes, that's pretty worthwhile. At least if you have an alchemist. In other cases, I don't really feel like it's worth it, but it would be an interesting statistic to look into, like how many runes your teams get corresponding to how likely you are to win the game. But let's forget that for now. Let's go look at some try-hard stuff in terms of the item slot. Do you have preferred item slots? I am asking you. Do you put them in different spots? I do. I do something like, you know what, let's get rid of these. I don't know why I bought those. Let's do a normal treant build for me. I do something like this. Where, probably not a mango. Something like this, maybe. 2 tangos. And I like having these in the specific slots. And in this case, I just let the Sage's Mask go. Most people would because it has no active. So where it is when I buy it is just is. And if I bought it in a different order, I would see this and I would go, oh, I want my salve here. Or like if I bought a mango, I'd be like, oh, I want my mango here. And you know, honestly, I don't care where this Sage's Mask goes. And to an extent, I don't really care where the Clarity goes either because it's never like an urgently needed spell where it's like, oh, quick, Clarity, oh no, I missed it. We lose this kill. You know, it's like when it is convenient for me, I will use this Clarity because I am by myself. So some items people are very likely to care where they go, such as the tangos, mangoes, salves, a quelling blade. Like I like to have it here or here. And these items really matter. But items like Sage's Mask, items like Iron Branch, any passive item, like a gauntlet or like a slipper more likely from a carry, like those don't really matter where they go. So why am I saying that? When you have a ward, some people will have a preferred slot for it, but at the same time, because you're just going to place it pretty quickly and leave, some people don't. And so it may just fall wherever they buy items like so. And then they place it and it leaves an empty slot. And this should be a little suspicious to you. I'm serious. If you see an empty slot in between items, you might suspect that they had a ward or a sentry, and they have placed it. Because otherwise, it should just look like this if they bought it in this order. Now, I wouldn't just de-ward based on this, right? But this was like what I was talking about, where it's like it builds a level of suspicion. It's like, why do you have an empty slot here? If you just buy your items normally, there is never an empty slot. It fills in order. And if you don't know, it goes from top left to top right, and then bottom left to bottom right. So it should have an order to it. The biggest giveaway is when you have something like this. Get rid of these. If you see something like this and you click on someone, they have an empty slot and something in their backpack, this is really suspicious. Like, why would you have this in your backpack unless there was something here? I'll tell you why. The only reason is to do a mind game like this, where you know someone is looking like for this. But many people don't think to do that. They just, you know, they had a ward, they placed it, and maybe they forgot to put it. Or now they put it in. Oh, you don't see it. In demo mode, there's no cooldown. But usually there's that 6-second cooldown where the item is grayed out, and that applies. I think, last I checked, you can see that on the enemy. You can see that their item is a bit grayed out because it is coming from the backpack cooldown. If you ever see that, you ever see one item in the backpack and an empty slot, or an item in their inventory but it's grayed out, that is a very high chance that they had a ward and they placed it. And then similarly, like I said, anytime there is an empty slot, that should also be a bit suspicious. Not as condemning as having that empty slot like this. Like, I think this is a huge giveaway. I would almost be willing to attempt a D-ward just based on seeing that, just because I think very few people attempt to do this mind game. But having an empty slot like this may not be it. Like, some people do just prefer their items in specific slots. Now, if there's ever 2 empty slots like this, then this is definitely not enough to assume they had a ward, because when there's 2 empty slots, it usually does mean that they prefer having an item here, because like if they didn't care and they had the ward, like there should only be 1 slot. There's no reason, there's nothing else you would buy that would be in a separate slot unless they messed up and like, oops, dropped a ward like that, you know? But you'd see the clarity on them, and then you'd see that. So following that, I do recommend you do this mind game, where if you have a ward,
That'll help you keep an eye.
put it like this, so that when you place your ward, these slots are empty, and it doesn't look suspicious, like, oh, he just bought his items regularly. Actually, it would look more like this, maybe, because usually you would buy both branches together. But I think people wouldn't think that differently of this. Like, you would just move it around because you prefer your mango here. Like, I'm serious. I do recommend this, where if you have a ward, try not to leave it like this, where it would leave an empty slot. Try to have it be out here. Conversely, if you don't have a ward in your lane, totally leave an empty slot, right? Make them think you put a ward down when really you didn't have one. And in the same way, sometimes when my item slots are filled and I don't have a ward, I will absolutely just walk into lane like this. And I make it really suspicious. I like walk to a very normal warding spot and then walk away. And because sometimes, like if they see me pop into vision and I'm still walking to the spot and then turn around, they might know like, oh, he was just tricking us. But sometimes you're not fast enough to react, like, oh, who's this on the minimap? And you click. And by the time you click, like you're not sure if I had one or not. So I absolutely do these kind of mini games where I like swap it in. And if you have a ward and you like legitimately this is the situation and you have to place it, swap it in immediately and get out of sight as quick as you can. Do not let them click you and see that you have an item on cooldown or that an item in backpack like this. Like, this is a pretty big giveaway. That's the kind of thing you're looking for when you're clicking around the map when the game starts. So now we're going to get into a game. And when you're waiting in lanes, you should be checking for, like, don't just look for your lane. Look for other people. Like, this mini-map doesn't work because it's demo mode. But, like, look for other people on the map because they might have the ward as well. And if you see one ward in the top lane and one ward in the mid lane, guess what? There can't be a ward in your lane. So you should check everyone as much as possible. And now, let us get into the game finally. So here we are in a game. I just played this last night. Now, I was debating whether I should get another set of tangos, so I was a little slow out the gate this time. And like, I do want to point that out. Like, I'm 10 seconds slow this game, which is not ideal. I mean, honestly, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes you really are. I think it's more important to get the right items than to be in the lane as soon as you can. But obviously, it is ideal to do both. So, I don't know why I'm sitting here. We don't need to see me just walk into lane. It's kind of pointless. Now, you notice Jug is not with me. That limits my ability to be able to come out and place wards and stuff. And I also want to point that out. Like, see how I delayed and this Wyvern. There we go. This Wyvern did not delay, like, at all. And she's just sprinting. Now we go forward. By the time she placed her ward... Look at this. They haven't even left their lane. That's so offensive. I can't believe them. Like, look, she got her ward out. She had boots, to be fair. So she's really fast. 330, so honestly, a Keeper of the Light would get here. But like we showed, Witch Doctor, the 5 position, 300 move speed, he even has a sentry. If he had left, like we showed it. The middle for, you know, Dire is somewhere in this area. So for her to get all the way over here, he should be like almost around here at least to possibly spot her backing out. But no, he's... Oh no, that's Timbersaw. He's over here. So this ward should go fairly unnoticed. Unless like it becomes obvious that they kill couriers or something. I didn't pay attention if this ward got dewarded in the game. But now even though I was like 10 seconds late, again, like look at them. They're not that late, but they don't seem to be like coming over here.
30 seconds to showtime.
Now I want to show what I'm doing here. Like I want to scout the lane, but I want to be careful because I don't know if this guy started invis or not. So he could kill me. And because he's the offlaner, he's probably going to break a tree. So what I was doing is very specific to Treant Protector. I'll explain it real quick. So I was coming over here to look. I don't have a ward. I was pretending to. But this is also just where I like to have the clarity. Now, I want to see them. So originally, I was just standing here. But if Treant's strength is that he can get away by just running through trees, even if he takes damage. And so I was just standing here originally knowing that if they hit me, I could just walk back in trees. But then I realized that if he had invis, he could just see me standing here. He could break the tree with his Quelling Blade and then hit me before I could react, really. And then my passive would break. I'd be slowed by his E and potentially an Orb of Venom. This guy charges me, and I could just die. So that's the other thing you want to do before the Horn. You're just evaluating ways you can die. If I do not have my passive, I would die. So I decided I had to stand in between two trees. But then I won't be able to see outside. So I'm going to like walk back and forth a bit so that he has a harder time cutting my tree. And I can try to time it. A Jug finally gets here. I couldn't move up too aggressively because Juggernaut was not here. Now in a 2v2 fight between these two and me, it would be okay. And that is a bit of a spoiler. This is what the offlane is. But we didn't know that. That was part of why I was trying to scout. But then I got scared to scout because they have a Spirit Breaker who, when he charges and bashes me, he'll kind of break the trees around. And that could ruin my passive. And again, if my passive breaks, I'm dead. Similarly, Timbersaw, he's the one there, and I get stunned, and then he runs up and uses his Q. That will break all my trees, do a ton of damage to me. And because Juggernaut is not near to back me up, I wanted to scout to look for lanes, but I was not able to. But fortunately, I don't know if you paid attention because I was showing my hero, and you were probably looking there instead of the minimap. Let's back up. Fortunately... Oh, can I show just our vision? Yeah. There. This is what we want to look for. We want to note that Timbersaw is up there. From my perspective, are we going to see that? Yeah. So I click him. Actually, I don't know if I clicked him, but I saw that he was up there at least. So I was looking for that information to know the lane. I see him here, and because we have an Alchemist, and I know Timbersaw's up there, I'm willing to risk my life. Unfortunately, I don't get it. I was going to back, but I realized I was just going to die. So I decided I was going to run around here where my slow is still going. The rune is not there. Fortunately, my passive is back from getting hit. Now I can teleport out. Almost died. I've got my salve. I'm also Treant Protector, so it's all bonus. I probably could have just tangoed up, honestly. I should do the math on that. I don't know why he did this. This is the next video, because this is technically passed beyond the horn already, before the horn. This is really bad. And if you watch the analysis replay, you already know that, where this is so bad. So bad. Out of curiosity, let's take a look at what this Witch Doctor did in his beginning of the game. I have no idea what he did. He is standing here. I think he could be a little more aggressive because Night Stalker is pretty weak. Winter Wyvern, I guess you don't know who it is, Winter Wyvern or Treant. And you know what? Treant plus Night Stalker is a little scarier. And that is probably the more expected lane. Like, Winter Wyvern is usually a 5, and Treant is pretty flexible in both. But I still think he could probably stand, like, over here. And even if I Nature's Grasp this way, he could cut this way. And if I, like, did something more like that, then he would just run back. So I think he could be standing out a bit more aggressively to look for the ward. Now what's happening here? It's hard for our team to get this ward because he has a stun and Timbersaw is really strong against him. Juggernaut probably should have ran out with me here too. The fact that he didn't is kind of why I had to... I expected to die at this point. So I told him to back away. Me getting out here was really just lucky. I absolutely thought I was just going to die. But fortunately, this slow worked out really well for me, where it built enough distance that I was able to have my passive again and then teleport out. So that's it for this one. Let's go to another game and take a look at that start. Here we have another one. I am Jakiro this time. Here we go. Speed along. I realized mid didn't have a ward, so I gave it to her. I thought she was the one with the ward. So I'm running over. I feel like my mango should be here. Oh, there we go. I fixed it. I was like, I never put my mango there. What was I doing? Now, I make a mistake here, and I want to show it. So this is me trying to keep up with what's happening in the other lanes. And you'll see here, I'm going to die. Well, I almost don't die, but I do eventually die. I think I probably should have just cut through here. But let's go back and see what happened. I very unfortunately went to go look bottom as that happened. So even though... Let's move forward again. After this game, and I watched this replay, I specifically noted not to do this anymore, and I never do it anymore. So sometimes it takes a mistake to learn. Oh, shoot, I did too fast. Right there, when Void Spirit walks into screen, my eyes were looking at this part of the minimap right here. And I was clicking it and shifting my eyesight over this way. So I missed that Void Spirit was there. We'll slow it down a lot. So I looked over. I was checking their stuff, and suddenly I realized, I was like, oh, there's a hero on both sides of me. This is really bad. This wouldn't be as bad. Now this is still my fault, but like this wouldn't be as bad if Drow was over here. We have this weird bug again where we're up. This is an older game, so maybe that's why. This was on my climb to Immortal. But if Drow was here, she would be able to help me a bit by slowing them, and I probably could have just gotten out. But the mistake here is that as I was turning this corner, I looked away, and that was bad. Against other heroes, I think I wouldn't have done it. I underestimated the strength of this lane. Oh my, I died to a duo Orb of Venom. That's so... What a waste. What's bad is that only one of them should have this. And I died to it. I can't believe it. But I kind of underestimated the strength of this lane. So I didn't see Pango and Void 4 and think, oh, that's a dangerous lane. I should be careful. Because Jakiro's pretty strong. So I was like... I wasn't thinking seriously about it. Whereas if they do have a really dangerous lane like Clockwork plus... I think I used Clockwork plus Veno earlier, but like that is a pretty dangerous lane. Let's go with like Tusk and Beastmaster maybe. That's also a very scary lane. Like if I had fully recognized the kill threat, I don't think I would have made this mistake. But after this game, I realized that no matter whether I think the enemy lane is strong or not, I should never be about to turn a corner and then like looking away. That's pretty bad. So that's the lesson from this clip. That's literally all I have for this clip, is that you do want to come out, you do want to scout, But when your carry is not nearby, and when you are like peeking around a corner, I should be like focused on my screen to see what happened. Because that 1 second of like if I hadn't looked away, I would have seen Void Spirit and I could have immediately started to run away. Whereas me looking down here gave them a full second to run around me, and then both of them start hitting me. Whereas before, he would have been like further down here, Void would have been here, and then I could have started running away. I might have still died in that case, but like it would have given me a better chance than standing here for a second getting hit. That's kind of all I have to say from that perspective. Shall we look at the enemy 5 again? I kind of like that. I've never looked at their 5s. I hadn't considered that as part of this replay, but okay. So here we are. I'll probably cut out me messing up a bit.
Everybody get set.
So you see, I'm already running out. And I do want to point that out. This guy's 295. This guy's 305. I am only 290. I was the slowest hero, and I made it all the way over here before they, at the same time they did, because they are like dilly-dallying in lane. I'm like already out of the base. And that's the same reason I think these guys get the jump, but I actually missed that part of the game, so I'm not sure. Is because like look how far they are already, while these guys were canoodling in the fountain. So he's able to get his ward down. This guy is absolutely nowhere near yet. And this is also a dangerous lane. Let's see what happens. Let's, well, I think this is fine. Oh, wait, no, I do want to see if just... Okay, so he doesn't see the clockwork yet. Oh, clockwork's just going to go for it. All right. That's kind of all. Actually, let's see if they go for the rune. They absolutely should not against a clockwork, I think. AM's a little stronger than people expect, but I think that... Now there's me dying. So AM's doing... Like, he realizes this guy is out of position chasing him. This guy's over here. He's just going to go straight for this rune and then get out. That's also a good decision you can make. And you could make that from, you know, the hard support position as well. But it works well for AM because he hasn't skilled anything. And if he has Blink, there's absolutely no way he dies. And he knows that. He's not necessarily going to skill it because he doesn't strictly need it yet. Like, he's just going to try to walk out. But if they go on him, he knows he can just level up Blink and then run away. What are they doing over this? This like literally doesn't matter. This is just a power play. I remember that. They were just goofing around. Nah, we're not going to talk about mid-wards. We don't care about it that much. Let's go on to another game, perhaps. This is another game I played last night, actually. We're going to... It's actually a 4-position Jakiro, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to find another example of running to body block, you know, conveniently, so let's just do this. Now, again, you'll notice I'm out of the base before these guys are, so I'm probably already like 3 or 4 seconds ahead of them. That is a bug to be able to see that, of course, but... My plan with this sentry ward is to block the small camp because I know there is going to be an enemy Chen, and that against Ricky and Chen, I am too scared to try to body block it. I'm a slow hero. I don't want to try to walk over here at the 1-minute mark and then the 2-minute mark and so on. So I want to place this sentry before the... Let's use a free cam so we can see if they ever saw me. Oh, did they? They did not. Look at that. So knowing this kind of information, I knew that it is possible for them to just be standing up here looking for me. So that is why you saw me... Like, I could have just run straight here to block this. But because I felt like, oh, it's possible they could be standing up here. And in fact, I should have even taken like a deeper route. But I did curve around. And I can judge it based on myself. So you don't necessarily need to have it memorized. But just know that the max people can see... Is it shown here? Let's not. Let's look at about here. So the maximum range that most people can see is 1800 in the day and then 800 at night. Now, some people have slightly different values for the night vision, and some people have less day vision, but no one has more daytime vision than that at the start of the game anyways. So that's why I ran around, placed it in the bottom part, because I'm just basing it off my own vision that like, oh, I can see around the edge here, so this is about where I'm safe. And I think I should have even gone a little further. Like, he was actually quite close to being able to see me. But fortunately it worked out. So I was able to block this, and I think it blocked... It at least blocked the 1 minute camp, of course, and I'm not sure after that. And so, see, I don't like what he's doing, where they could have seen me do this if they just walked out further. And, like, we're not that strong of a lane, so, like, I really feel that the 5 position should be coming out here. Like, if you're scared, you can still just, like, run around here, hug the tower a bit, like, poke your head out, stand around here. Like, think about where they're going to come out. For the off lane, I realized we didn't really cover that. But for the off lane, like, if you were the 5 position, like we just saw in the last video, me being here was kind of bad, because where are they going to possibly come from? They could come from right through here, or maybe they go around through here. So if I want to be careful of that, I should stand, like, say, over here a bit. Well, I guess here is probably the best spot, where I would see them turn this corner, or I would see them walk up these stairs, or actually really right below the stairs. And if they were trying to sneak around this way, when they get to around here, I would see them from there, and then I can run this way if they're coming up this way. If they're here, I mean, that's pretty far enough where I have my choice of going back this way or this way. If I see them here, I run backwards. Now, what if I had stood here, looking for them this way or this way? Well, standing here, looking this way, doesn't give me nearly as much time to react, but it is probably still okay if I just run this way and cut this tree and walk out. And if they come out this way, I would see them. Again, not that much time, but it doesn't take that much time for me to run over here either. Or I probably still do have time. But if I was standing here and they had snuck around this way, I am not going to see them until they are right on top of me, and that would be really bad. So thinking about where you want to stand is also a good idea. Like, this is a safe position, but it's like a little too safe, where Ricky is probably going to get Blink Strike level 1. So Chen could be here, and Ricky could be out here scouting a bit. And if for some reason we decided to gank with our ganking heroes of Drow, Clinks, Keeper of the Light, Storm, Jakiro, if for whatever reason we were doing a 5-man smoke with this lineup, like, I think he would just blink and get away. So considering where you're standing is kind of what this whole before the horn thing is about. Let's take a look at what our own team was doing. Oh yeah, they were getting the kill on this, which I think is totally worth it. If you're ever against a Beastmaster and you just see one of his boars alone, definitely try to get the kill. R5 position. I don't think this was worth it, but let's see why he chose to do that. Where is he? So he clicked Keeper, or he clicked Beastmaster, and for whatever reason, he decided to put this here. I don't think they saw him earlier with a ward. Am I wrong? Yeah, so, like, I don't think they ever saw him with a ward. So I'm kind of surprised he sentryed so early. I don't think it was really necessary. Yeah, he didn't block the camp. I guess they're going to get this bird. That's kind of worth it. Is it? Kind of, yeah. But is it worth placing the sentry knowing that would happen? Like, you don't know that would strictly happen. You kind of do against a Beastmaster, and this is something I have been playing around with, is trying to have 1 or 2 sentries to kill the Hawk, because it is actually a decent investment in gold if you can get the kill and get some experience for it, and then he loses vision. But this seems pretty preemptive. I might have waited till I see him cast Hawk. I don't know. Shall we look at another game? I don't have one planned, so we're just going to pick one out and see what we see. Replays are not working for me. We're going to record one live. I hope I am a hard support, because otherwise...
ban somebody.
Well, that one's done. Let's try the next one. Maybe we'll be position 5. I decided we're going to use this game as an example anyways, even though I ended up being the 4 position. It was a really weird game, but we don't have to worry about that. We're just going to look at what these 5 positions do at the start of the game. First off, to point out, Here is an example of someone who just keeps a blank space in their inventory. I guess he just prefers having his items in this order. So when I ran into him and clicked him here, and I was suspicious a bit. It is a little weird because usually, here, let's go to player perspective. I feel like it's uncommon where, like, who buys Sage's mask and then the ward, then they're like Sal's and like, oh yeah, I need tangos. I feel like tangos are one of the first things people buy. It's very common, see, for tangos to be like in the first 2 slots. And so the fact that his tangos are down here suggests that he is more likely to be a player who has preferred slots. I know that sounds like pretty over analysis kind of thing, and it is, but at the same time, it is something I think about anyways when I'm looking for people's wards. Turns out this team only bought 1 ward to start, and Mirana has it. So, but I ran into him and I saw that, and I thought, okay, I ran into him right here and thought, okay, he could have just placed it here. I suppose that's possible. But I clicked him pretty fast, and I didn't think he had one. And then he could have placed it back here, I suppose. But it's a little weirder because we're a pretty weak lane compared to them. Like, Slark Jakiro is a very strong lane, and us as Rubik Nyx, not so strong. So it felt like they could be really aggressive, so I don't know why he would ward back here. I feel like he would want to ward a bit more aggressively, which is not what he did because he doesn't have a ward. But that's about that. They can play pretty aggressively and just stand around here because, again, we're pretty weak. And so eventually we're just not going to go for this rune. And I don't really feel like I need to actually talk that much more about it. Bane. So he's got a full inventory. He could do that trick where you try to, like, mind gain them a bit. Again, it's not the biggest deal in the world. Now, if you want to do stuff like this, you can. It is a game after all. It's fun. But I do feel like you're kind of like asking yourself to get Mirana aired or something if you're just channeling here, maybe goofing off. If Mirana had run down the side, now Ursa did run down this side, so you can see it. But if he hadn't, arrow through the trees, and it's harder to react because you don't see it coming until it suddenly like comes out the trees. Same with like standing somewhere here where the arrow could come this way, or like if you were standing here, someone pops up here and sees you, and you're just like goofing off, and then an arrow comes this way. Against Mirana and against like Pudge, you want to kind of stand a bit more in a way where it's like open and you can see the either arrow, the hook, like some kind of projectile coming in, and then you can dodge. And you want to avoid these like close corners where it could come out and just hit you and you would never see it to react. And that could happen if, say, they place the ward first and then you were just standing here thinking you were safe, and they see you and they're like, oh, let's all just like stand here and then we'll hook him and kill him. So generally you want to like keep moving. And again, it's fun, it's a game, so if you want to do this goofy stuff, you can. But just do recognize maybe you're setting yourself up to get hit.
30 seconds.
And these guys are much stronger than these two, so I don't think they can really go in. They have to depend on an arrow hitting, but it's a bit hard. Especially because, I mean, he's almost for sure going to take Brain Sap, but if he really had to, he could get Nightmare to dodge an arrow. And that's kind of it. I feel like you'll probably get that idea, right? I think like 3 or 4 examples, whatever we did, that's probably enough. Just leave Fountain as soon as you can. Go put your wards down and be mindful of where you stand. And then take a look for people who show up. As they show up, remember, if you watch that mechanics on awareness, like as soon as you see someone show up on the minimap, click them, see what they have, check their items. Oh, what's this guy got? Oh, he's got the ward. Isn't that cool, guys? There can only be 1 more ward in the game. Not this game because it wasn't bought. Mid Enigma, some like weird stuff. Like, this is a game where you wanted to go scout the lanes because it was like, who is the mid and who is the 4? It's like, I guess it's mid Enigma, or maybe it's mid Mirana and a 4 Enigma. This is the kind of game where you want to scout lanes, and I think they could have done it because they were pretty strong. I don't think they saw Mirana, so they could have played a bit more aggressive and like run up here to check, I think, trying to find out the lanes. Because Enigma is a really weak rune fighter, so like it's very unlikely that Enigma is over here to like, he has to start with this, and he can't use this at the beginning. So it's pretty safe to assume that he's just going to be a walking creep. And for that reason, if he's going to be a core, he's going to go block the lane. And even if he's an off laner, like he's not going to really contest runes because he's so weak. And knowing that stuff is how you decide, like, oh, okay, we can play a little more aggressive and run up over here and stuff. So that's that. Yeah, next time we're going to be talking about what to do when you die. Thanks for watching. That's all I have to say. Until I have more to say. Because I am no good at being brief. Goodbye.